At Juilliard, I was teaching playwriting and feeling very frustrated about how hard it is to teach someone. And I was in the elevator and it said master class with Leontyne Price, 4 p.m. And I looked and it was 3:59. I said, oh, that'll cheer me up or take my mind off things. And as soon as she walked out, I thought, this is so theatrical. Here's one of the great divas of my lifetime, you know, teaching, saying this is not about me. And of course, we're more interested in Leontyne Price and the student. I said, this is such a theatrical setting. And then another 2 or 3 years later, I was at an event where actors were doing different scenes from my plays. And Nathan Lane did a speech from Lisbon Traviata. And Zoe Caldwell came out and did a scene from A Perfect Ganesh. And just like that, I said, Masterclass, Maria Callas. I wrote the first line of the play on my program, no applause, and I wrote the last line, well, that's that. Then I thought, all I have to do now is fill it in for 2.5 hours in between.
We're talking about an artist of the caliber of the greatest artists ever, like Michelangelo or Nijinsky or people like that, which the more they lived and the more they had, they conquered.
She was the queen of opera, but the thing she wanted was to be the queen of jet society.
Most sopranos can make you cry in the last act of Traviata, but she made you cry in the second act.
When we say Maria Callas, we think always on the artist, on the singer, on the interpret, and the actress, everything that you want. But the question is, who was Maria Callas, the woman, Maria Callas? Who knows this? I don't know.
She had a very curious birth, you know. The firstborn of the family was Jackie, and then there was a boy, and that little boy died when he was about 18 months. And the parents very much wanted a boy. So Maria told me that her father went to an astrologer to ask when would be the best time to make love so that a boy would be born. Well, they were terribly disappointed that it was a girl. In fact, her mother wouldn't look at her for about 3 days.
And although money was tight, Maria and her sister had music lessons on the insistence of their mother, who had herself dreamt of a stage career. Both girls showed musical promise, but Maria felt overshadowed.
She believed she wasn't pretty, because Jackie, her sister, was a very pretty girl, still is a handsome woman. And she ate a lot of sweets. She got fat. And she hated to look in the mirror. And so, at the same time, her mother was forcing her to perform before friends and sometimes in public.
The family tensions grew as Maria's talent became more evident and her mother's plans grew more ambitious, with an endless round of radio shows and talent contests.
The program was that, of course, I should become a singer, I should become an artist in any case. Usually what parents say is, well, I sacrificed myself for you, but you will do what I was supposed to do in life. I suppose that's general.
In 1950, Maria persuaded her mother to join her on an operatic tour of Mexico. It was an attempt to break down some of the old tensions that had grown between them. But spending time with each other only caused the familiar resentments to re-emerge. The tour ended. They parted, never to meet again.
But the fact is that your father, your mother, and your sister somehow have left your life along the way.
Shall we say, we frankly did not agree too much. They had a way of living that was not my way.
In 1958, Madame Callas was interviewed by Edward R. Murrow at her suite at the Waldorf in New York.
Madame Callas, much has been said and written about your temperament. What do you have to say? Are you really temperamental?
What do you mean by temperamental, Mr. Murrow? I quite haven't understood.
Well, I suppose tantrums, throwing things, screaming.
Dear. I have never thrown anything at anyone, though sometimes You feel like it. No, tantrums. It's not even true. It's just certain situations that turn up, you know nothing about it, and you just react as any normal human being.
But Callas was not just any normal human being. In that same year, 1958, she walked out on the Rome Opera, was barred from appearing at La Scala in Milan, broke up with her husband, began an affair with Aristotle Onassis, and was fired from New York's Metropolitan Opera by its director, Rudolph Bing.
Anger, if you don't get angry sometimes, even not really, essentially, you never obtain the results. During performances, if I really didn't get angry, and they were not afraid, the other people would not work more than the necessary.
You mean they're afraid of you?
Afraid? Yeah, yes.
Afraid of what?
I would have to sort of whip them with my angers. If you don't whip them into working twice as hard, either morally or by your, shall we say, tantrum, which is also sometimes false, they would never be able to come at that date, shall we say, 3-4 days, as I prepared operas in 3 or 4 days. If I didn't really start screaming and yelling, you wouldn't have the result. We would not have gone on stage.
You've said, I need to be constantly boosted because I am a born pessimist.
That is true.
Really?
That is true.
And you need somebody always puffing you up?
Yes, because the weapon that is against me is exactly that. Whatever I do is never good enough.
A perfectionist.
Perfectionist, unfortunately.
And perfectionists are miserable to live with.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
It was in Verona that she met the two men who were to become important influences in her life. The conductor, Tullio Serafin, and Gian Battista Meneghini, a wealthy Italian businessman, 28 years her senior, who befriended her and began to look after her business affairs. They married in 1949, and his support enabled Callas to concentrate on her career, unconcerned by financial worries.
Well, for instance, my husband, he wanted so much that I be La Divina. For instance, he was taking things out on people, as he was nothing special.
If your husband was nothing special, why did you marry him in the first place?
He was a good person, I thought. And if you have as my home family was not, with my mother, I was not well off, and I was alone, and I felt that this person really loved me. But I'm afraid that he loved what I represented. It was a very unfortunate episode of my life that I prefer not to discuss.
It was at a party thrown by Elsa Maxwell in Venice that Maria first met Aristotle Onassis, the Greek shipping millionaire. Although both of them were married, he pursued her relentlessly. Following the performance of Medea at Covent Garden, Onassis threw a lavish reception at the Dorchester, and Maria found herself increasingly attracted by his charm and flattery. Onassis persuaded Maria and her husband to accompany him on a cruise on his yacht, the Christina. One of the other guests was Sir Winston Churchill. It was during this cruise that Maria announced to her husband that she was leaving him for Onassis.
Onassis didn't keep you from being a normal human being.
And then with Mr. Onassis, we had a wonderful life. I don't regret every bit of it. I do regret when I stopped singing.
You stopped singing because of him?
Well, no, I worked less and less because evidently he did not like me to sing.
He didn't marry her. She was always on tenterhooks about whether he would marry her or not. Although she did tell me that they had planned over a number of times to get married, and then at the last moment they fought. And either she disagreed or he wouldn't have it. So they never got married.
Scorpios, the tiny island that shot into the headlines when Jackie Kennedy, America's former First Lady, became the second Mrs. Aristotle Onassis.
Maria became a recluse in her flat in Avenue Georges Mandel. Numerous attempts were made to interest her in restarting her career. A proposed recording of La Traviata, to be conducted by Giulini, with either Pavarotti or Domingo playing Alfredo, was abandoned at the last minute when she lost her nerve. She made a film of Medea with the Italian director Pasolini, but it was not a success commercially. She gave master classes at the Juilliard School in New York, here teaching the tenor role in Tosca.
Only the first two phrases are, you know, sort of like a recitative, but not exactly. So you should not give it that much importance.
Yeah.
In other words, you spare yourself if you...
Any regrets about the Onassis?
No regrets. What he does is his own privilege.
But when he left, did you feel that you had given...
He didn't go.
He didn't
go. We had just decided that that I would resume my own life.
Do you know what I think? I think you're still in love with Onassis.
Well, I think in some way both of us are probably in love because we have led a beautiful life together, and I think both of us understand each other as nobody. But at a certain stage, love becomes different. You see, if I was brought to a stage that I left him, that meant that the deep core of the thing, I really didn't love him anymore.
Wait just a second. You had a husband.
And I had a lover.
And you had a lover.
And that's that.
You've had your husband, you've had your lover.
There are not very many men that can be near me.
One last question. Last question. On the occasion of this comeback tour of yours, one critic in Germany wrote that the world tour might turn out to be a grandiose finale, or it could turn out to be an artistic tragedy.
So far, it hasn't been a tragedy.
And you don't...
I belong to the category, the difference between the ancient Greeks and me is that I don't cry on tragedies until they happen. If they happen, then I don't cry on the tragedies. I cope with them. So let's hope for the best.
But hoping for the best could not ensure that final comeback for Maria Callas. Here at London's Festival Hall, one critic called her performance one of the saddest evenings he ever had to spend. To be honest, he wrote, her voice, a shade of what was, could not begin to answer the demands she and the music made on it. Alone, she went back to that apartment in Paris and spent her days listening to her old recordings. On the 16th of September, 1977, 4 years after that interview with Mike Wallace, she collapsed and died of a heart attack. Maria Callas was 53.